Welcome to the Human 24 Live on Form podcast. This is a conversation with the people we have encountered and met across our lives. People who have and are still inspiring us with their journeys, an ongoing pursuit to fulfill their potential. Experts in their given fields, legacy builders, and people who strive to perform at their very best every moment of every day. We dig into their hows, their whys, what fuels their purpose, and what their ingrained daily habits are that ensure structure continues to defeat chaos. We hope you enjoy. Okay, welcome to this edition of the Live on Form podcast. And joining us today is Hannah Jackson, aka the Red Shepherdess. Hi, Hannah.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I know that it is a very, very busy time for you, not only with various other things that are going on outside your life, but obviously in the world of farming, you are currently lambing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been absolutely flat out for like the past 3 months. There is little baby lambs popping out left, right, and centre, and we had like little piglets born for the first time this year. So it's been chaotic but amazing. It's literally the best time of year on the farm.
So let's dig into kind of farming first, just because our viewers, I'm sure a lot of them, probably come from rural backgrounds, but explain to me a bit more about kind of what farming life's like and what a day entails, or what an annual farming calendar looks like.
Yeah, I mean, so I wasn't from a farming background at all. I was brought up on the Wirral by Liverpool. So, I mean, I was also new to it like 8 years ago. I started farming. And I think the best way to explain it is literally is a all or nothing kind of lifestyle. Like you literally, like when you decide to go into farming, like you're entering it like full, like wholeheartedly. So, the best thing is that it's so versatile. Every day is so different. Some days I wake up at like 5 a.m. Some days I wake up at like 7 a.m. Sometimes 8 a.m. Like it depends what's going on. So obviously this time it's lambing time. I've been lambing since January. And I've been getting up as soon as the sun gets up, basically. So in January, it's not that bad because obviously the sun is not up that early. But yeah, it was like now it's probably like 5:30. Up
Really?
and at it, make sure the lambs are okay because they tend to pop as soon as they're born. So
So lambing is just basically you're keeping an eye on a huge flock. So how many sheep are we talking here?
So on my farm I've got 250, but I've like been working on like 3 other farms that have got like 1,000, 1,200 each. So you're basically like a sheep midwife for like a few months of the year. So you're making sure that the lambs come out okay. If you need to assist them, you have to assist them. Obviously, like sometimes there's like 3 lambs in there and they get a bit tangled up, and and then obviously once they're out, that's half the battle. But then you still got to keep them healthy and alive and happy. So there's heaps to do. Keep on your toes for sure.
So you're saying that as though it's just something that you do as part of farming, but does that involve like some veterinary training, or is there specific training that you have to go through? I'm guessing there is, right? To be able to, because essentially you're giving birth to lambs, right?
I mean, it's no professional training like how you would go to do like a midwifery degree or anything like that. It's literally, I think when you farm, you have everyone has quite a similar kind of mindset of like you throw yourself in the deep end and you learn along the way. So that's all I did. Like I spent hours and hours in lambing sheds, like being mentored by other farmers at the beginning. And I mean, now I look after sheds of like 1,000 or more sheep on my own at times. So I mean, you just learn on the go, and you just have to like soak everything in like a sponge. But it's amazing. It's like you're welcoming new life into the world, and to see like a lamb take its first breath for the first time, it's just like incredible. So it's addictive at the same time. So
wow. And like the whole farming thing, I grew up in a rural, I grew up very near to where you are. And a lot of my friends were farmers and were sons and daughters of farmers and blah, blah, blah. And obviously farming is something that generally is something that you kind of do because your parents did it or your grandparents did it, or, because obviously there has to be a farm, right? So that farm tends to be passed down through generations and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
And then obviously you're at that point, I'm tell me if I'm wrong about the age. You'd have been about 20, right?
Yeah, I was 20 and I'd never stepped foot on a commercial farm before at all.
Right. So explain that to me. So you're 20, 8 years ago. So we're in 2012, roughly around there. So
yeah, 2013, right? I think it was.
We're in the social media generation. We're in this huge generation of people doing these, anything kind of away from what we would class as kind of work of a previous generation. People get away from trades, plumbing, electricians, blah, blah, blah. And people were moving away from them. Certainly your generation were.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden you grew up in a town.
Yeah.
You know, you were in the Wirral, right? And I'm assuming there's some farms around the Wirral, right?
I mean, yeah, very like, the Wirral's like split in half, basically. Like there's a very tiny side and then there's a bit of a rural side at the same time, but mostly dairy, never sheep. I never really saw sheep.
So what point did you think at 20, right? And was there anything, and I'll ask you this question as well, was there anything before that? Because obviously people are starting to think about what they want to do as a career. You know, you're meant to think at like 11 or 12, right? You know, people are going, what do you do when you grow up? And then you get to kind of 15 and 16, you're doing your GCSEs or whatever it might be. And then reality kicks in and you've actually got to make a decision as to what route am I kind of going to go down? Or do I just go through a general route where I get a bunch of qualifications and then figure it all out after that point? So you're 20 in a town in the Wirral and you've decided, was it a sheep farming thing or was it a farming thing? I've decided.
It was an animal thing.
It was an animal thing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was always obsessed with animals, like since before I could even walk or talk. Like I was drawn to animals. Like I had a connection with animals. Like I think even when I was tiny, I could see like behind an animal's like eyes and see like there's more there. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I was obsessed. Mum and dad called me like Dr. Dolittle before I was like even walking and talking. So I always knew that animals was definitely going to be a thing for me. I've always wanted to be outdoors, and so those are the two big things that I had to tick. And then I watched Free Willy when I was little, and I was obsessed. Like killer whales were like my thing. Like literally, all I did was swim to pass like a SeaWorld like fitness test. So I was like, I'm gonna like get there. I'm gonna be on that stage. I'm gonna be jumping in with the killer whales. Thought it was amazing. And then I saw them in the wild for the first time in Canada, and I cried. I was like, oh my word, like this is just the most beautiful thing. It's just like they're completely living like their natural life, and all this that I wanted to do growing up, like it's awful for them. Like it would have been like the best thing for me, but awful for them. So I started a degree in animal behavior, and then I went to Canada for 6 weeks, and I lived in the wilderness, like just in a tent in this tiny little island. There was only 5 of us there. No electricity, no running water, and we were studying killer whales like in the wild for like their government research. And it was insane. So like came home from there and I was like, boom, I have found the calling. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I knew that I always wanted to work with killer whales. Applied for a master's in marine biology, got that, and then 2 weeks after I got accepted onto the course, I was going to start in September. This was the April before. I went to the Lake District and I was on a walk with my family, and I just was walking and I was like, oh, what's that sheep doing? And she was giving birth to this lamb like right there and then. And it was sunny. It was right in front of the lake. It was just like a bit of a movie scene, to be honest with you. It was a bit over romanticized, but it was amazing. And I just watched this lamb born and I was like, oh my word, like this is hands-on with animals. It's outdoors, it's every day. Like I was like, this is it. I was like, this is like, I can't believe it. Like, and I was like quiet for the first time, and I'm never normally quiet, as you could probably tell. I have a lot to say. And it just like struck me right back, and I was like what better is it to do than to bring like new life into the world? So yeah, I announced on the way home in the car back to the world to my whole family that was it. I was going to be a farmer.
Did you tell them that?
Yeah. You said I was going to be a farmer.
I do. And I'm going to do it in the Lake District. Was that a call as well?
I mean, that was where I wanted to be. Yeah.
Really? And then that was the first time you'd ever been there?
Oh, we've been to the Lake District like every Easter. We used to go.
Right.
So I mean, like I've been around. Like I'd seen like sheep and that on the fells and the fields, and like never really had that connection before. But it took that kind of that lamb being born and that whole kind of process, and I was just like, wow, like this is incredible. Like it was just like a light bulb moment in my head. Like it just went ding, Hannah, listen. And it's like one of those points in life where like your life gives you two ways. You can like go the safe way and you can go and do your animal like marine research, or you can like really follow like that instinct moment, can't you? And you can either go, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be hands-on, which is what marine stuff wasn't offering me. I wanted to be outside, which is also what it wasn't offering me every day. And yeah, it's do you listen to life at that moment and just go with your gut and be brave, or do you just play it safe and maybe regret it for the rest of your life?
Mad. So fast forward, so at that point you've decided, right, And what are you, like 18, 19 here?
I was 20.
You were 20 at this point. So, oh, wow. So this has all happened fairly.
Oh, it was big. Yeah, it was fast.
This is a fairly swift sort of thing if we've got like timelines, right? So like you've decided
7-week transfer. Yeah.
You've told your parents, right? This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then what happened? So you've prepped the marine biology masters. You've decided that's not for me.
I deferred it for a year. I thought I'll be sensible. Like I deferred it for a year, and I was like, look, I'll give myself a year to like throw myself right in and see if I can make a career out of it. See if it's something that, see if it was the way that I thought it would be as well. Like I didn't want. Obviously I'd not been on a farm before. Was I completely getting the wrong interpretation of what farm life was like? So I gave myself a whole year, and then I've never ever looked back since.
Okay, so what did you do? So at that point, so you're in the car on the way home with your parents. You've decided that this is the life for me. I'm going to do this. I'm sure your parents would be probably thinking, yeah, it's just a bit of a whim here, and
I think a lot of people did think. I think the biggest thing. Yeah, the biggest issue in people's heads that they couldn't get their head around was like, Hannah, you love animals, so how are you going to deal with like the end process on the farm of like you like seeing them through their whole life, and then you like basically ending their life. Well, not me personally ending life, but me, that is the end goal, isn't it? But I think like what a lot of people didn't really see was like I've always had such a deep understanding of the circle of life, and that we all coexist together for a reason, and it's very balanced. And so I mean, yeah, it's sad, and it makes me sad all the time whenever I take my animals, but also it's like a sense of pride at the same time. I think I had that mentality before I even started farming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's always the big overlying question that people have about farming is, and a tricky thing to understand, right? And this is a discussion I've had with a lot of my friends who are farmers. You know, and it's a discussion, especially with, you know, various things that come out on Netflix and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's up in the air and everybody has a view about it. But again, nobody's really asking a lot of these questions to kind of the right people. And I think that's coming from a rural background, right? When you come from a rural background, you understand that. You understand there's a little bit more to it than probably is being divulged, right? Which I guess is part of the message that you're getting across, right? And
absolutely,
so people can understand more about things. And I think that's the great thing about social, right? There's a lot of people taking things where people have this stereotypical belief of something, and then they go, right, I'm breaking it down. And obviously you've opened this massive, this Pandora's box of farming, right? Because farming and everything like that, you're not the stereotypical kind of farmer in any way, shape, or form. And I hope you don't mind me saying that. But
no, not at all.
But you stand out, right? You stand out for firstly, it's a very male-dominated thing, right? It's a massively male-dominated thing.
Yeah.
It's also something that kind of is a male-dominated thing, but it tends to be something where males are doing it probably with their dads, and then they gradually sort of migrate into it and blah, blah, blah. Now you don't have that family kind of, it's been handed down through my family. I've decided at 20 years old, living in a town, I'm a female. I'm interested in marine biology, and all of a sudden I'm going to do a career.
So many different things against me. It was ridiculous.
And I've decided on a career that really seems really obscure, right? It does, right? Even in today's day and age, never mind all the other criteria there that is different. But in today's day and age, somebody to decide they're going to be a farmer who isn't from a farming background, I think is rare as hell, right? And pardon the pun, but rare as hen's teeth, right? and we've never seen hen's teeth, right? But it is that strange thing. And I think I have this different understanding of it because, again, a lot of my friends were farmers. Absolutely. And my grandparents were farmers and blah, blah, blah. So you've gone into this world, and then what was that first introduction to that world like? What was it like for you? So you're in this world where people are looking at you going, hold on, something's not right about this. Right?
Yeah. I think I was actually quite naive at first. I think I thought that I was just going to roll on in there and be like, hi, my name's Hannah, I want to work with sheep. And then everyone goes, yeah, come on. Like, come and join us.
Like that. My name's Hannah, I just want to work
quite. With probably did something. But no, like what you said, like I literally had so many different like stereotypes and barriers I had to break through. I was a Scouser, I had red hair, I'd stepped right off a town, I'd never been on a commercial farm before, I was a woman, like I had no background in anything to do with farming. Like so they were all different things that I've had to break through, like continuously, one after another after another. And it was super hard to get the foot in. Like I always say, like the farming industry is such a tight community and they look after each other so well, but trying to break into that event, like initially, is like really hard. So I mean, I rang so many people, I emailed so many farmers, I knocked on doors, I applied for jobs that it's so embarrassing, because all I had on my CV was like, I love Wales, like I've worked with Wales and like stuff like that. Like I had nothing to do with a farm. The last time I was on a farm was when I was like 3 or 4 feeding pet lambs with my nan on a bottle that we paid to do. That was my experience of farm life. Like it was ridiculous. So, but I think I'm a very stubborn person, and like when I get something in my head, I'm very, very determined. I don't stop until like I get to that point I need to get to, if that makes sense. So I mean, even with all the no's, and like even how like discouraging those no's and those like knockbacks were, I just kept going until eventually I got a breakthrough. And with a sheep farmer in Keswick who was an international sheepdog trialer called Derek Scrimminger, and I had a pet border collie at the time. He was 4, and he was like, do you know what, like come for a week, I'll see if your dog can do anything and if you'll have any kind of future work in sheep. He didn't. He was awful. But that week turned into 9 months, and that turned into forever in Cumbria.
Wow. And I'm assuming, you know, you're learning the craft, you're learning the trade, you're learning the abilities that you need to have to do what you wanted to do, right? And was this specifically lambing? Was this specifically a type of, because again, we've got different types of farming, right? That people sort of need to understand. So there's like dairy farming, there's arable farming, there's so the type of farming that you were into was.
So it was a sheep farming, but I'd missed lambing time completely. So this was kind of all the after stuff after that. So he was on a big, massive fell, so like a big open mountain. So we were gathering like thousands of sheep off the fell with the dogs, and we were like injecting and worming, like using lambs and all things like that. So kind of the general kind of maintenance and welfare of looking after your animals on the farm. But like even just understanding how to work with sheep was just a mind-blowing experience. So when you don't like have anything to do with sheep before, like I would go into the pen, and it's like so cringy now to think about it, but I would go in there and be like, come on sheep, and they would be like, no, the sheep don't come to you, like you hush them away. And I'm like, oh yeah, so sorry, and like I had the most patient man in the world who taught, like, because obviously I was always in the wrong place, I was always doing the wrong thing, because you really have to get into a whole different mindset. Like we're so used to, as like the normal general population is so used to having such domesticated animals, that yes, the sheep is half domesticated, but like it's a completely different kind of way to work with them. So I mean, it was a huge learning curve.
So you were with him from when? So how old were you at that point?
So I was 20. So I was there from June until just before lambing time the next year. So I turned 21 there in July, and I got my first working dog off him. Well, my mum and dad bought him before I made my birthday present. So yeah, 20, just about to turn 21, and then I stayed with him. So from June till the Feb.
And when we refer to working dog, just so again people understand what.
Yeah, that's my border collie.
So a working dog is, you know, it's a dog that's bred and trained to assist you with lambing, right?
Absolutely, and like helps me gather the sheep and do any kind of work with the sheep at all. So yeah, they are bred for that purpose, and but they're like your best friend as well. Like literally, you say working dog, like, and people automatically think, oh, you just like shove them in a shed when you're done with them. But like any decent farmer or shepherd has such like a massive and amazing connection with their like dog, that they're like your best friends. Like, oh, mine go to the pub, mine go paddleboarding with us. Like they're like fully integrated to all parts of life at the same time.
Cool. So you've done your kind of intern, you've learned the craft, you've learned the skill. So what happened then? Was that then the point where do you go farm shopping?
I mean, I wish I was going farm shopping straight then. Then it's okay, like you need to like spread your wings now and take the next jump, and you need to kind of go somewhere else. So I think the only reason that I've progressed so fast in the industry is because actually I took those kind of more uncomfortable challenges and took them head on. So instead of working in one place where you just got to do the same thing over and over again and you got really good at it, then I was working for different farms, different farming systems, different animals, different types of farms, like, and all of a sudden, like, your knowledge goes from like this to like this, just because you're pushing yourself and you're putting yourself in different situations with like different people.
Okay, and that's
so that was my.
And is that kind of different types of sheep? Is that different types of land? Because obviously you started over in Keswick, right? And Keswick is it's kind of
very
rocky
hilly
hillsides and blah, blah, rather than fields as people will probably perceive it, right?
That's it. So I was going from a really big, high, like hill farm in the mountains and stuff like that. And then the next farm I went to was like a lowland farm, like a typical farm where you think your fields and sheep and yeah. And then I've done like so many different types of farms. I've done like cattle farms, done like farms using loads of technology and loads of science, farms that are very traditional, and you just learn, you pick up all these different things. And that is like literally like the best tip I give to anyone, in not just in farming but in life, is to go and get like these different bits of experience from everywhere, because then you can implement those things into what you want to do then.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we'll get into this kind of sciencey kind of stuff later, because again, this is farm. You know, I think anything that kind of is handed down through generations, I think sometimes struggles to embrace new technology or new evolutions of what you can do in these fields, because people are very old school, right? I always say this about sports like boxing. Boxing is something that's kind of handed down through generations. So a coach learns off another coach who learns off another coach, and things get missed because they don't look at the bigger picture. And obviously you're coming to this from a brand new background. You don't have this history. You don't have this kind of, oh, I've got to do it this way because this is the way that my family always did it, or whatever it might be. And I know that you've embraced certain aspects of the science of farming and things, which we'll dig into shortly. But I'm just trying to get this timeline as to where did we get to? And then, so you've now spread your wings in this farming community, in this learning more about different types of farming and different types of, you know, flocks, herds, etc. So then where do we go?
So then basically my family fell in love with this kind of country lifestyle and the way it is. My mum and dad have got a company that is based on the world, but it takes them all across like the UK, so they're everywhere. And they were like, look, we need somewhere as a family where we can like come and slow down. And we were going out in the caravan like all the time when we were little, so we just needed like a base. And they were like, why don't we see if we could find like somewhere up here that had a bit of land so we could just dip the toe in to start. So then we found here in Croglin, and it had much more land than what we thought. Actually, in the end, it had 21 acres, which is still minute in the farming world. Sounds a lot to everybody else, but it's tiny. So we took the big jump then as a family to kind of buy this, and that was my like biggest commitment again. Then I was this kind of nomad going around these different farms doing what I wanted. Like I was going like down south, I was going to Scotland, and then I was like, boom, like now it's my turn to kind of settle, find a little space for me to settle and try and really make it in the sheep world properly. Like I always thought, yeah, I can work for other people and that's great, but I've always wanted to do a bit more, and I wanted to prove myself more. And I was like, I'm a sheep farmer and I've got my own flock of sheep and I'm farming in my own right, not for other people. So we had the 21 acres, and for a long time I was stuck with 21 acres. I was like, trying to get land is the hardest thing in the world around here. It's gone as soon as it's up. So now I farm, over the last few years, accumulated land. So we now farm 90 acres, but I rent all of that. So I don't own any of that, unfortunately, which is very sad. But it's like a massive thing for me. I went from like 30 sheep to now like 250 sheep, goats, pigs, like chickens, ducks, like, and I'm just like proud that I've done it like to myself, and like we've built it myself. And and then like the family have just kind of, they love farm life, so they just, when they're here, they're always involved and up and doing little bits and lambing, and it's amazing. Like the whole family's taking the jump with us. Like my sister's 2 doors down in the village, she is a doctor at Carlisle, and she married a farmer who farms like down the road. So yeah, it just kind of all weirdly fell into place.
Very cool. So tell me about the acquisition of a farm. So you bought a farm. So
I mean, it's
I kind of know little bits about how this works, but
like a small holding, I would say.
So you're buying a farm. Is the farm working when you bought it, or was it just
it was awful.
Right. So it was just a farm. It was a farmhouse, outbuildings, land.
Just one. So it was a farmhouse that no one had lived. Well, it was a house that no one had lived in for like 30 years. There was a barn, and then there was 21 acres. Okay. It was like bare. So I mean, I started and didn't even have a bucket to feed sheep with. Do you know what I mean? Like there was nothing there.
So you had to buy the sheep. So you didn't have the sheep to start with.
I had nothing. So it was just these buildings.
Literally land buildings. That's it.
Yeah, and like we had to do all the work to the buildings before anything was even livable or doable. And then then I had to go like buy my own sheep for the first time, which is just a whole riot in itself, going to the auction. Like, and that was like a big thing for me. So I would like normally I'd be going to the auction and I'll be like just with someone else, like just like tagging along, like someone else like selling their sheep or buying sheep, just seeing how it is. And then all of a sudden, like I'm sat there in the hot seat, like, oh my God, I'm about to buy like my first sheep. Like this is a monumental like milestone right there. And I was sweating. I was like sweating. And like the thing about an auction, for nobody that's been to like a sheep auction, you can't move a muscle because farmers don't like put their hand up and like put themselves in to like buy sheep. Like it's these like minute little movements, like you'll just be sat there and I go like this.
Yeah, like
that. So like even if I like, and I sit and I'm like a bit of a faffer, I like faff like this, and I'm like, I can't, like honestly I was sat on my hands for a while, like do not bid on something that you can't have, like, or can't even afford, like come on. So yeah, and I remember like the first time the hammer went down and I was like, oh, they won't even know where I am, they'll shout my name, and they went, oh, Jackson, and I was like, I've arrived. I have arrived. The auctioneer knows my name. I've just bought my first sheep. I was like, hell, here we go. Like, this is where like the beginning really, really is.
Yeah. Mad. So, yeah, I've got a couple of friends who are auctioneers, and it's it fascinates me. It's just the speed at which they talk. I'm always like,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's literally like people go, yeah,
tiny, or like a tiny little finger, or like they'll just move their like program sales sheet a bit, and you're just like, it blows my mind. They're incredible how they do.
Crazy. So you've got your flock of sheep. I assume you bought more than one, right?
I bought 20 with lambs as well. So
with lambs as well, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's ready. You're ready to roll at that point. So you've got into it. You've got your farm. You've got your flock, your sheep, and then what happened then? So at that point, you're a farmer in Croglin with a farm with sheep. So where's this then all of a sudden expanded into this kind of social network? This, the new kind kind of almost superhero.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Who gave you that monocle? Who gave you that kind of I'm the Red Shepherdess? Was that? Did you decide on that yourself?
I decided that myself.
Right.
Yeah. So when I first started in the industry, like obviously I had no connections, I had no knowledge, and I was like, I just soon discovered that on Twitter. I started on Twitter more than like Instagram and Facebook. Soon discovered that on Twitter there was actually like this really good kind of network of farmers on there. So I started on there, and I just started like trying to get involved in like debates and discussions. And then I was like, actually, like I need like a name so that people remember like who I am. So like I didn't have the farm at the time, but most people like their Twitter handle is like their farm name or something like that. So I was like, I don't have that. So like, what am I gonna do that's kind of gonna make me like memorable? So I sat with like my mum and dad for ages. I was like, what? And my whole family. I was like, what? Brainstorm, guys. Like, what can this be? Like, I didn't want like tacky play on like you and you. Do you know what I mean? And all that kind of thing. So, and then my mum actually came up with it. She was like, oh my God, like, what about like the Red Shepherdess? I was like, you've got red hair, you work with sheep, and it immediately says that you're a female too. It's like, it just hit like, and it's like, it said everything that it needed to about me without needing to know me, if that makes sense. So I mean, and then that's how it started. And so the Red Shepherdess literally was just a talk, like it was just a name to like talk to farmers. And then like without even like realizing, it snowballed and it progressed into this kind of what it is now, which is kind of to talk to the general public about farming and to offer an insight into what we do as farmers every day. And I think because I wasn't from farming at all, and I've not had that I wasn't like brought up like with all this farming language. I can like talk to normal like non-farming people in like terms of where people understand and like explain it. And because like once I didn't know the difference between hay and straw, I didn't know like anything. I didn't know anything at all. So and it's just snowballed into what it is. It was never ever ever the plan ever. The plan was to be outside and work with animals, and then this journey's just kind of expanded into this whole thing. But I love it, and it's one of my biggest passions, is to try and connect like these two worlds that has been so separated over time. And it's to try and get people to really understand what you're putting into your body, where the food comes from, like how it's been raised, and just try and defeat all those myths as well that are expelled about the industry that are just not true.
Yeah, and I guess it like you said, it's that whole thing of the shepherdess. It's like all of a sudden it's people like, their ears.
It's everywhere now
because they're like, what? Okay, so firstly, someone's a shepherd still.
Look, this is the thing. This is what I say. Yeah, to a shepherd to most people is in a nativity that comes out once a year, and that's it. Like
you have to have a stick, right?
Yeah, to be fair, I do use a stick.
Big swirly thing at the top, yeah. So you got that, and you're shouting, random whistles and noises at dogs, and that's how people perceive it, right?
Absolutely, and they also perceive it always as a man. So like, and that's another thing that I do the online thing, is it's like my biggest thing is like for people to understand, like no matter what your background, no matter like what your gender, sexuality, your religion, no matter what, like you can be whoever you want to be and whatever you want to be. Like I think society puts us in these boxes so young that like all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, like men can't do that, women can't do that, and it's all a load of like rubbish. Like you can do like whatever it's down to you, and you have to be accountable to make yourself succeed. But we don't have to be put in these boxes, and we don't have to stay in these boxes that are so rigid for society.
And I think that's a comfort thing, though, isn't it? Is that
absolutely
people want this belonging, right? We talk about this. I talk about this a lot with guests. Is that people want a belonging, and part of belonging to something is kind of you almost play up to the stereotype, right? Is that that expect you to come on here with your hair slicked back and a bit of tweed and a bit of, but it's that stereotype, right? And when you break that stereotype, it's an uncomfortable thing to do, which means that you've got to have a certain demeanor. You've got to be fairly tenacious. You've got to be willing to kind of accept that there's a lot of people aren't going to accept you. And I think that's the tricky thing. And I think, I read a couple of interviews that you did with a couple of papers and things like this. And it was, and that was a topic that often came up was, you're in this world where you're deemed not to belong. I think the word where you don't belong is wrong, because you're deemed that you don't belong. Because people look at you, you're different. You don't fit the stereotype. You don't fit the mold. You're young. You're very young. Nobody would ever think, oh, you're a shepherd or a shepherdess, and you're you're in your 20s. What's that?
That's it.
People perceive, and it's like a movie depiction, right? You see a shepherd in a movie, they're like 50 or 60 years old, and they're a bloke. They've got their flat cap on and blah blah blah,
and they're grumpy.
And then there's all of that. So you've broken this mold, you've broken this thing, which obviously then opens doors, right? Whatever way you cut it up, it opens doors, and I love to see, and what you've done is something that I love seeing, where people just go, I'm going to leverage the hell out of the fact that I'm different.
Absolutely.
In the world I'm in, I'm going to take everything that is theoretically seen as my disadvantage, and I'm just going to use it to my advantage. And this is what I see you've done in many respects, and you've gone, with all guns blazing. If you've gone into this and you've started talking to people that will be like, well, hold on, you're not kind of welcoming this conversation, but you've then stood it out and gone, I am welcoming this conversation. And that is a huge part of kind of what I perceive you've kind of gone through, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you are right. It does take like, I guess, a certain personality to do it, but I think it is doable for people. You just have to have like a mindset switch, whereas you just think of it as like, nobody owes me anything, and I don't like, and they don't owe it to me to make my way into this industry easy. Like it's down to me to like carve that path and have those conversations and be uncomfortable. But like, I'm a bit weird. Like, I like being uncomfortable. Like, they're the places that you grow. They're the places that you learn. They're the places that you you have all these like experiences that like make you the person that you are now. So, but yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and it's been so challenging. Like you said, it's opened up so many doors. Some of them have been good and some of them have been bad, and they've just been part of the process along the way. Like, I'm glad that they've opened up both doors, because literally it's built me and made me better as a person. And it's hardened me up and given me like a hard shell. I mean, that there's been times where it's been bloody awful, some of the things that you end up being exposed to. But you've had to just take it on the chin. But I think my biggest thing is that I don't want to normalize those things either, like those bad things that have happened, and like the kind of crap that you get given to you along the way. Like, I want that to be like eliminated for other people, and that's why I speak about it so often and like speak about it so publicly, is that it shouldn't be normalized as, well, when you open yourself up to the general public and you open yourself up to big amounts of an audience, like that's just what you get. Like, that's not like how it should be.
Yeah, it's a very small proportion of what you get, right? In the grand scheme.
So small.
But unfortunately, it has a huge impact on a lot of people. So that one, it's like that one comment in amongst 100. You get 100 positive comments. That one negative comment will be the thing that plays in your mind, right? Rather than
absolutely.
Really.
And that's just the way that the human brain is programmed. Like, you could have a sea of amazing comments, yet that one will niggle and niggle, and it will dig into all those little insecurities. And like, whoever you are as a person, you could be the most confident person in the world, but you always have like an insecurity somewhere. And those comments will niggle in if you let them. Like, I let them at one point, and then that was a huge, huge learning curve where I never let that ever happen again. But again, it's learning, isn't it?
So tell me about that. So let's inject a little bit of reality into this. So along the way, I understand there's going to be this stuff where you've got the kind of older heads, sort of people just rolling their eyes and like, you shouldn't be walking to an auction mart and like 90.
They're never that bad, to be honest. They don't really ever say anything to you.
Well, they can't, because if they say anything, they probably think it's they're bidding for something. But
that's
it. So tell me what sort of things have you contended with? Obviously, you've got social media, right? Social media is social
media. Is it's only on social media. Like, that's just the thing. Like, in real life, like, I've one that I work. No, I should say that there is also one that happened recently. It wasn't social media. Mostly it's social media, and I think mostly when you say that you've had like a hard time with social media as a farmer, people automatically think activist groups like vegans, whatever, trying to kick off. But like, I hardly get any bother at all from any kind of activist groups like that. Like, I don't know. I think I'm very open and honest about what we do, so I don't really get any bother. This came from like a small minority of actual farmers, and I think that's why it was even worse. Like, and they were publicly saying things about me on Twitter, and Twitter is a really public place, and the farming community is a small world. In the farming community, it's like any kind of industry, everyone knows everybody, don't they? And like, I was accused of sleeping with farmers to get jobs, and all of a sudden, like, it sounds like nothing, but all those things took away everything that I worked hard for to create. Like, I made this life for myself. I worked my ass off to the ground. Like, I worked for free for those first 9 months just to get in a foot into the industry. I traded sheep for jobs in the end, so I could get more sheep on the land, and they just paid me in sheep. Everything that I did it myself, and like all on me. And like, all of a sudden, to have someone say something so awful and personal about you, which is the complete opposite, was awful. But then it just took away everything that I'd earned and like worked for. And it went everywhere. And everyone was talking about it. And I was just like, what on earth? And it was like with another farmer who I'd worked for 5 years, and his family were like my second family. And I was like, that can have such like an impact further down than what that person like would even think. So I mean, then they would say like I wasn't a sheep farmer just because I took photos of sheep didn't make a Scouse or a shepherd. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, and in the end, I was like, do you know what? Like, I'll prove them. I'll keep my little farm here and I'll apply. There was a farm manager job came up down the road, and I was like, I'll apply and I'll smash it, and then that'll prove all of them, and they can't say a word to me if I do this farm manager job. And it was the worst mistake I ever did. Like, and they say it's the one time I let people really, really get into my head, because I was like, I only did that. I made that decision based on other people, not based on me. I ended up like 6 months into the job, slumped behind a stone wall, crying my eyes out next to my dog. Like, I hated it. I went from like doing everything I loved, working with animals every day, being outside every day, like working with different people,
to
like being by myself, hardly working with animals, being in an office, everything going wrong. And it was like a breaking point. Like, I'd lost my spark, I'd lost the spring in my step, like, and then I was just sat behind this wall, and I was like, it was like, that was my time. I need to get a grip. Like, get a grip of yourself. What are you doing? Go back to why you started farming in the first place. What was it for?
Yeah.
And it was to be outdoors, and it was to be out with animals. And that was where the biggest mind shift came for me, I think, was to start using those negative comments as actually determination, just to prove them wrong and be myself even more, if that makes sense. I had to just go a long way about it and learn the hard way. But I'm so glad that I did do it now, even though it was awful. And it also taught me that like I think a lot of us are scared to fail. And I think at times I've been scared to fail. But actually, through that failure, I learned so much about myself, about myself and about this journey. And I mean, yeah, it was a bloody nightmare for 6 months, but
I think bad decisions kind of make you, don't they?
They do, especially if you handle it the right way.
Yeah, and if you're forced to it, and unfortunately, kind of what you've said there is, that's I think that's the stereotypical go-to, isn't it? Is for any woman that's making it in a male-dominant world. I think that's the generic kind of go-to that
isn't it?
People go to, isn't it? It's and it's the easy one for them to go, oh, I can make this up because nobody can really prove. Everything. And they know it's kind of it's a safe thing to say, isn't it, in many respects from them. But I think a lot of this, it stems from people don't like their environment being shook, right?
That's it.
And I think that's what you've done to a lot of people, is you shook their environment and gone, hold on, I'm bringing something new to the table here that you don't like.
I think that was literally it.
Yeah, and people get threatened by it, right? Irrespective of anybody, people get threatened by it, and it's
absolutely.
It's quite funny in the farm world, because the farm world is like massive, right? It's not like
it's massive, but then small. It's weird.
Yeah. It's
there's like plenty of space for everybody. This is what it like.
Yeah, I can imagine if every farmer was on social media and they've got these booming social media channels, but like, oh yeah, I can kind of understand this, but there's not many people doing what you're doing.
No.
And I can imagine if there was some competition there. But anyway, so this has led to this character. Red Shepherdess, which is essentially fundamentally just you, right? It's just you telling people your story, telling people all about farming life on farms, your history and where you came from, the background that we've talked about. And then that's opened up doors. It's opened up opportunities and along the way. And I know you've just written a book. We'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
But
crazy.
But like I said before, there was this kind of new and fresh set of eyes almost that you brought to the industry. And I know that you've talked about it before, is that this embracing of science. And we talk a lot about this in human performance, right? And I also talk, and maybe not so much nowadays, but back in the day when I used to talk to a lot of athletes and professional athletes and about performance, a lot of the data that we used to get used to come from the world of horses. Because
no way.
Yeah, so horse racing, because horse racing there's a lot of money in.
Absolutely.
And it's all about the animal. So if the animal doesn't perform, so a lot of the performance stuff that at the time, if you had a fast human being, you couldn't really make much money out of it. You had a fast horse, you could make a lot of money out of it. So a lot of the science was being plowed into horse racing, and you could take a certain amount of that back and go, hold on, we can apply this to human beings, the same principle. So there were, things like electrolyte balance, all electrolyte stuff came about through horses, where they used to submerge the racing horses in these big baths that would have hypertonic, hypotonic solutions in them to hydrate.
That's incredible.
And there was loads of stuff. There were, heat therapy, cold therapy. A lot of that stuff came from the world of horse racing. A lot of the data came from the world of horse racing. So you're saying now in the world of sheep farming, we've got data, we've got analytics, we've got all this stuff where we can, tagging them and monitoring their behavior and things like this. So tell me a little bit about the science and what you've kind of embraced yourself, and obviously what you're trying to bring to the fray a little bit more for other people.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the farm here, we run it as naturally as possible and sustainably as possible. So all our sheep and all the lambs, they grow as naturally as possible. We don't feed them any kind of concentrates or anything. We don't bring anything in. They fatten and they grow off grass alone. And I think that's a big difference between like a sheep and lamb that's been pushed for feed rather than something that's left to kind of grow and develop by itself. So obviously we wanted our flock to be as efficient as possible. So this year, we only just started this year. We are now recording like everything about our sheep. So as soon as those lambs are born, we're recording how heavy they were when they were born.
Yep.
And then we'll record every like 8 weeks, 12 weeks onwards, and see how they're going, see how well those mums are rearing the lambs, to see if they suit our system or not. Because basically there's no point keeping, it's like somebody who works in your business who's not on board with like the values and the principles of that business. There's no point in them being there. They need to leave and go find somewhere that does suit them. So there's no point in us having sheep, and it's not fair on the sheep to have to push it when it doesn't suit the system here. So we're doing that. We've bought tups, like the male sheep, we've brought them in, and we've really focused on the data that they've been gathered with the company. So we buy through Innovis, and they record everything about the tup, so they can tell us like a lambing score, how well they produce lambs that lamb themselves and easily, how quick they fatten on grass, how much muscle depth they have. So we've picked out certain like traits that we want to put into our flock. So we've picked like the rearing on grass, fast growth rates, good lambing, and we're putting them into the flock now. I say them, like I'm looking out there, because just out there in that window. To kind of to bring a lot more like productivity into the flock and efficiency. So we'll see how it goes. I went to Australia for 6 weeks last year to work over there with some sheep, and they were doing it loads.
And New Zealand's big, isn't it? On
New Zealand's also massive.
And so is this like a bloodline thing? Because obviously we talked briefly about horse. Well, I talked briefly about horse racing there for a second, but horse racing obviously to do with bloodlines, right?
Yeah.
So is the world of sheep farming very similar in that you're looking at the bloodlines of the tups particularly?
I mean,
like muscle density and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the more traditional pickings of sheep, they go a lot of bloodlines and just kind of visually how they look. And that is how a lot of sheep farmers like pick their tups and that. And like, the bloodlines like seems to be like more of an important thing there that way. Whereas when it's the data, it's kind of more, you're looking at individual sheep more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I mean,
yeah.
I'm not looking at any bloodlines or where it came from. I'm just looking at what's there in front of me and how that tup's performed, or what it did the year before. So that's all I concentrate on is what's there right in front of me with this tup. Because we all know that like it's like with sheepdogs, like you could have the two of the best dogs ever, you put them together, you might have a litter of pups that don't work. Like you can't guarantee it, can you?
Yeah, of course, because it's it's like genetics and
blah
blah blah.
Yeah, so I just literally look at what is on that paper in front of me and what's been proven already from that individual, and that's what I picked up. So this year I didn't even look at the tup that I bought, which is a bit of a scary big move. A lot of farmers would be like, that's ridiculous, you should also look, but I do trust in the company that I was working with too, to like make sure things like teeth, balls, that was all good, decent, and so but yeah, so I took like a big old leap into the world of science and that. But so far, I mean, it's paying off from what I can see so far. So like we have hardly lambed any sheep or anything.
And I read some stuff about grass, right? Because obviously,
grass,
it comes down to the quality of the food, right? So essentially, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is the quality of food. And I talk a lot about sourcing food, right? Sourcing food, sourcing meat, sourcing fish, sourcing, where did it come from?
Yeah.
And how has it been treated prior to it making it to your plate or whatever it might be? So, So we talk about grass because obviously grass is what they're fed on. But obviously you're just sending them out into a field and going, eat that grass that's on that field. But what if that grass on that field isn't very good, right?
Yeah, so we're managing the grass much more now than what we ever used to. So, I mean, we used to just kind of throw a bunch of sheep in the field, hammer the field down, take them out for a while. When it throw it back
in again. Yeah.
But now we're like rotationally grazing. So now we're kind of like, we're not hammering the fields right down. We're taking it down to a length where actually the grass boosts back quicker and grows quicker. So we're growing a lot more amount of grass in the time that we would have normally. So, I mean, like grass is free, like utilize it, and it's the best stuff that you can feed your animals on. So if you're not making the best out of what you've got in that topsoil, then no point, in my opinion. I don't like sheep or animals that are pushed and not living a natural kind of life and environment.
No, it all makes sense. I mean, to me, it's all logic, right? It's all, you're looking at data, you're going, right, what's the best data we've got? What's the best way of, if we can feed our animals better, the animals are ultimately going to, have a better life. They're going to be a better quality of animal at the end, and blah, blah, blah. So that's all fascinating. I'm sure that's a rabbit hole we could go down and probably talk about.
Yeah, and everyone else probably like, don't really care.
I don't really care. I'm actually really interested in it. I find all that stuff quite fascinating. So, and then the opportunities. So you've got the social channel starts to grow, right? And I'm guessing, largely through the topics and the things that you're talking about that are interesting, right? It's stuff that people relate to, and people go, I'm actually quite interested in this. This is so the stuff we've just been talking about there, although we think that people might not be interested, they could well be. So it might be quite fascinating to get into. But and obviously the rural community is massive. Certainly in the UK, people don't realize because they're probably not populating social media quite as everybody else is. It's not an inner city sort of thing. So opportunities start to rise at that point. So you've got the book. You did the SAS Who Dares Wins, which we've got to get into, which sounds incredible.
Loved it.
And where did them come from? Those opportunities? How did they come about?
To be honest, the SAS thing wasn't massively to do with. I guess it probably played a part. A lot of people think that I went on the celebrity one, that's why, but I didn't. I was on the normal person one. I was just obsessed with that show, right? Literally, I loved it, and I was like, that is incredible. And then like 2 days before the deadline closed, I found out that they were taking women for the first time, and I was like, what on earth? And I was like, again, at that kind of thing, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the first set of women to go through it. I don't want to be the second. Like, I want to go through it first, and kind of like, it was another chance, wasn't it, to kind of show everybody that women are badass, and they're like, they can take everything that a man can take, like, and we can do it. So I applied. Actually, stupid story, to be honest with you. I applied for it, and then didn't hear anything, and I was like, oh, it's a bit like weird. And it was just in the August, and then I emailed them, and I was like, I'm really sorry. I realized I sent my application to the email that you get withdrawn from the process. You don't want to be, if they don't want you to look at them anymore. And I was like, what an idiot you are. Like, that looks really good for your admin, doesn't it? Like, you can't even send it to the right place in the first place. And I spent like 3 days on this application. It was long, and it was very kind of like in depth about like your biggest regret in life, your biggest, like, it was very like psychological at the same time. And then they were like, oh, really sorry, but we've picked everybody and we're telling them on Friday. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake. So I went in, I do a lot of CrossFit, went into CrossFit gym, threw some weights and some bars around in the mood, like, you are an idiot, you've just like wasted the time. And I came out, and they emailed me going, we've just read your application, can you do like an interview tomorrow? And I was like, yes. So I jumped on Skype the next day, did like an 1.5-hour interview, and they're like, right, it's going to go to a board, we'll let you know tomorrow. And then they were like, next day, they were like, okay, you need to go do a fitness test and a psychological test like next week. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, are you joking? So I'm like buzzing around. Mum's going, no, don't go. Like, what if they make you look like an idiot on TV? And I was like, why will they? Because I'm not an idiot. Like, they can't, if you don't be an idiot, they can't make you be an idiot. Like, she's like, what if you get hurt? And I was like, I'm one of those people, like, say yes, worry about it later. Mum is like, she's very logical thinking and going, oh, what about that? And I'm like, I haven't got time for that. I'm going. I'm like, off to do my fitness test, and I'm off. So yeah, and then they rang me, and they're like, okay, meet us next Saturday at Heathrow Airport at this time. I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea what was happening. Just rocked up, and it was unreal.
And that was when they told you to go to Heathrow. That's you off to the actual.
Yeah, off.
To do the thing.
I didn't know where I was going. When I got there, they were like, okay, you're going to Chile. I was like, oh my God. So I text my mum, like, Mum, in case you take my phone off me, I'm going to Chile.
Wow.
She was like, oh my God.
And that was 2019, right? So you were and you made it through to the finals, if I'm not mistaken. So
I did it right to the end, and then they didn't pass me. But for once, I didn't talk enough in my life.
Really?
So
and how challenging was that?
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and probably will ever do. I like, physically, it was the most hardest thing, but psychologically, I mean, like, I learned so much about my head there, and I learned how to control my mind so much. And I think that's the only thing that gets you through, is that ability to override self-doubt, the ability to override like the pain. Like your head stops you like so much earlier than what like your body has left, if that makes sense. If you let it, like I reckon you have like 20% left in the tank if you really, really push it, but you've just got to get past your head going, I can't do it. I can't do it. You need to stop. I need to stop. I can't breathe. And you just got to go, I can do it. Like keep going. And like, I don't know. I just, at the same time, you're like, I'm on channel 4. Don't be shit. Like sort yourself out. Like this is good. Like a lot of people are going to see this, but yeah, I mean, that gave me a lot of power in the end, like to really understand how your head works. Like I went to some pretty grown places in my head.
and I guess that kind of catapulted your audience as well, you know, made it more of a household name, right? People were like, so when you went on there, were you Hannah Jackson, or were you
Hannah Jackson? Yeah.
No, did people recognize you?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so you have to think at this point I wasn't on Instagram at all in 2019. And I was only on Twitter. There was about like 16,000 people that followed me.
Right.
I think I was on Instagram with like 2,000, but I wasn't even like posting as a farmer on there. It was just personal stuff. So yeah, all of a sudden, like I'm on there, and it just kind of went bidding. Like it was like farming. Then I was on another farming program on the BBC at the same time as SES. So it was like the farming world exploded, the kind of like fitnessy, mindset-y, that kind of adventurous world also exploded. And then also like this kind of like, not like feminism, because I'm not like a big feminist, but like this another area where it just showed that women are capable, if that makes sense. And it gave, and like I think that's one of the things that I'd just love to do. I'd like to show other women that you can do whatever, like you're capable of whatever you want to achieve, like and you don't have to just do things because society says so. Like and I've had that from when I was little. Like I was like one of them girls that ran around with the top off till I was 10, like played football, climbed trees, like was proper one of the lads. And I think I've just carried that mentality all the way through, hence why like something like SAS like didn't even occur to me like that it's a big deal that women like I was a woman on there, if that makes sense. And when you get there, it didn't matter if you were male or woman, like you were all treated like nothing.
So who was the nastiest?
Ant was the nastiest.
Ant was the nastiest.
Yeah. But I mean, like you have to learn to pick. And again, I think because the farming world set me up massively well. Like we're not a big industry of like compliments or giving people compliments. You have to search for them. So like you'll get like a backhanded compliment, if that makes sense. So like you have to look for them. So like when I was one point we were doing the ladder thing where we had to like walk across the ladder over this big gully of rocks and waterfalls, and I like went across it quite cool. Like all those kind of things I was fine. Like the adrenaline stuff, give me it all day, I will take it. Like I loved it. So I just like went across this bridge, and like Billy turned around to me and he was like, bloody hell, number 25, she haven't got a name. I was number 25. Like, bloody hell, number 25, you ran across that like a scouse sewer rat. I was like, I'm gonna take that. You just called me a scouse sewer rat, but you just said I did it faster and did it well, so I'm taking it. Like, and they're the little things that like when like you feel like you've got nothing left, like they're the bits that you, if you know where to pick them out from, it just pick you up enough to carry on again.
Yeah. How long did that go on for? So you were filming that for how long?
11 days.
So it's 11 days full on.
Like it never stops. Like I think you probably get like 3 hours sleep, but maximum a night. Like no shower, just no hot water. I had no hairbrush. I remember brushing my hair like on like the 10th day with like a shoe polish brush and Vaseline, because like it had turned into this dreaded knot of everything. And it was like it was an awful peach color, because I decided that when I went in there I wouldn't be like this red-headed kind of like, I didn't want the attention on me. I wanted to just sail through and just be like a grafter, head down, graft. And then it didn't really actually work to plan that, because as soon as I got off the bus they shouted at me for smiling. It wasn't ideal. So my grey man plan didn't really work. But yeah, I think it's literally down to mentality that sees you through that program, literally.
Right. So from that, when now you book just came
book.
Call Me Red.
Just Call Me Red. that's mental. That like hit Sunday Times bestseller in the first week, and I just like, I couldn't even believe it. They rang me the Wednesday before and they were like, it's like, oh, we'll just do a Zoom meeting, like, know how the book's getting on. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And then they were just stood there with like, all sat there with like a glass of like Prosecco, and I was like, what's going on? And they were like, you've hit the Sunday Times bestseller list. I was like, are you joking? Like, I cried. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. And like the only reason I hit that Sunday bestsellers list is because the people that have followed this journey and followed me and support me the whole way through just massively like got under me and like just pushed me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's down to those people and everybody that like showed the book to a friend or family or bought it for someone else or like pushed it on social media for me. Like, they're the people that like made that happen. Like, wasn't me writing the book, like it was them. And like, I just had such like an overwhelming sense of like how amazing and loyal people are. Like, I hate to call them followers because they're not even like followers. Like, they're I don't know, like I call them like
a
Team
community,
Red.
isn't it? It's a community,
like a community.
It's a community of people who have it, who are interested in you as a person and what you got to deliver, right? And clearly that's happened, and that's happened very well. So people are clearly interested in your journey because you wrote a book on it. So tell it for the listeners that don't have a copy of your book, what is the book about? What are you talking about in that?
So it's like, it is like a memoir, and it hits a lot more of like, so obviously people only knew me as like current like Red Shepherdess, Hannah Jackson, like the last few years they've followed. So like, I wanted to kind of fill people in on my childhood coming up, the things that I'd faced, the things that I didn't really like about society or like the school that I was in. And then it talks about getting into farming. But I think mostly is that the book has like common themes all the way through. And that's basically things like mindset, like breaking barriers, overcoming challenges, like basically what we keep talking about here, like doing what you want to do. And like, it's I hope that people put it down and they feel inspired to live the life that they wanted when they were little kids. Like, I think we owe it to ourselves to do what we wanted to do. Like, all those things that when you were little, those things that like sparked your imagination and filled your heart with like fire, like they're the things that we should be doing as our everyday life. Like, it makes me so sad when I go online and I see people like dreading Monday or like craving a Friday, because like I live this life where I get up every day. It doesn't matter what day it is, like, because I just love it. And the book, it hits like on all those vibes basically. And obviously it's all the ups and downs of life too. It doesn't rose tint anything. It doesn't rose tint farming in any way. We talk about death. We talk about everything. All those sticky kind of debates, women in farming. It opens them out and it gives us a place to actually talk about things. Like, social media is great and I love it, but you're very limited on how you can explain things. So the book's kind of, it's me bare and all basically.
And you've done quite a few sort of public speaking gigs. People they're interested in your story and you explain a little bit obviously about this stuff that's in the book, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do loads of talks like from all different things, from like big like industry companies to schools to kind of people breaking into the industry, farming talks. Present on Countryfile now part-time, like every now and then, which is mental. I mean, whoever thought when I started to go farming I'll be on Countryfile, presenting Countryfile, like blows my mind, absolutely blows my mind. So I mean, these are just opportunities, and I'm very much a person of, when opportunities are given, I say yes and worry about it later. And like, I make it work, like, because you never know what will come of those opportunities at all. And like, I never want to look back on life and say, I wish I did that and I wish I said yeah to that. Like, I'd rather do it and muggle my way through and learn rather than like worry about anything else.
And is that a challenge with time? Because obviously as a farmer, you're massively committed to time, right? You've got obligations that, it's almost like having family obligations, but you've got a family of like 250 people. You've got
absolutely.
So does that restrict you sometimes with respect to the time that you've got to do these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive juggle. It is a huge juggle, and you've got to prioritize that at the right time. Like you said, there is 250 more animals out there that are relying on me to look after them and to make sure they're well and they're cared for. So they always come first no matter what. But I keep the farm at a manageable kind of size, so like I can do that. Like, I think when I first got in the industry, it was all like my kind of aim was to have 1,000 sheep, do this, do that, because in my head I was like, the more sheep you have, the more animals have, the better farmer you are. And I've had like a massive mind shift of that recently. Like, actually, numbers doesn't matter about how good a farmer you are. It's how you care for your livestock, how your business runs. Like, that's what makes you a good farmer. So I keep it small. Like, I think the maximum I would like to get to is 400 breeding sheep, and then just fit everything else around it. Like, there's been things that I've had to say no to. There's been some TV stuff I've had to say no to because it's at certain times. But then I have to remember that I'm not in it to just do TV. I'm like, I'm doing this because I love farming, and all these things come as an extra bonus to me. So I say yeah and I say no as and when, but I always try and say yeah. There's not many things.
I guess it's a hybrid role, though, isn't it? Is that most people are getting into farming. Farming is it. That's all you do, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because of, you put yourself out there and you talk about things and people want to listen. So if people want to listen, unfortunately, you've got to go places where you can vocalize that, and you get opportunities. More normally, people who are just getting the head down and just farming and not expressing that and putting that out there, and not going to get those opportunities. So they're not going to be able to do it. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Is that you want to get the message out there, but you're also reasonably limited as to how and when you can get that message out there. So
and also like it's almost like a second job at the same time. Like, it really is. Like, even just the social media is like a second job at the same time. The consistency that you need to keep showing people and to keep people like with you on this journey is massive. And like, sometimes there's times where you really just want to sit and do nothing, and you just want to have that Sunday where you just do nothing. But then it's like, but no, like, you like there's everybody's waiting for you out there to kind of come and show them a bit more. So you feel there's a big sense of responsibility that way too. But I will say that I'm a massive kind of advocate for like mental health in the industry. So like, in our industry, we lose like one person a week to suicide, which makes me feel sick, and it's awful. And that's because a lot of things, like, we have a lot of like factors like isolation and unstable like trade markets, weather, but then also we have this very kind of like attitude of like stoicism. So like, we don't talk about our emotions, or we never even get like sad or whatever. We handle everything fine, and that's it. So we don't really talk about it very much, and we don't leave the farm either. Like, as talking as the whole of the industry, we're not good at taking time away from the farm, because I think we almost live up to this thing of farmers spend every working hour working, or every hour in the day and night working. So that's another big thing that I try and push, is that actually, even though we farm, we have a life outside farming too. Like, even like, if we've worked all day, we'll grab the paddle boards, we'll head to the lake with some beers and have a little paddle around with the dogs, or we'll go like wake surfing. Like, we live a life at the same time. And I think if we want our industry to keep thriving and keep welcoming and making like the industry a space for people to have a career in, we have to show people that you can do both things. Like, and that's what we don't do very well at the minute. I think we don't make it the most inviting career in the world, because everyone thinks you don't do anything outside the farm.
And it's it's a hell of a challenging job. I mean, it is literally 24 hours. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's it's a massive job, and I've witnessed people do it all of my life, and I've got a lot of friends who do it, and obviously that mental sort of health aspect. There's been a lot of curveballs thrown, obviously, in the last year or more with COVID. And coming from a rural community, I grew up in a pub. It was in a very rural area. Is that so you realize that the pub is kind of like, and this was a conversation I had the other week with somebody, is that the pub is much like the gym is, right? For a lot of people, it's a mental health thing. People go there because they can vent to their friends, they can have a couple of drinks, they can relax, but then they start to vocalize things that they not vocalize, right? So it's about the stoicism, it loosens the stoicism a little bit, and people start to talk about the problems. But and it's certainly in rural areas, pubs are still a thing. They're not quite what they used to be, but they're a thing, because people go there to socialize, talk to other people, vent their problems, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden the outlet had gone, right? So the outlet had disappeared. Gyms, so that's my industry. The health and fitness sector is that all of a sudden people are like, oh well, it's just gyms are closed. I'm like, well, a lot of people go to the gym for the mental health aspect
Absolutely.
is that all of a sudden you're in a community of people you're surrounding yourself by. You're going in there to vent. You talked about going to a CrossFit box just then, where you said, look, I was a bit angry and annoyed that I'd sent this email thing, so I went and I threw some weights around, and that's a mental health thing, right?
Absolutely.
You're not thinking, I'm going to go down there and get myself in better shape.
That's it.
I need to go somewhere and I need to vent this and I need to put it somewhere. And the gym plays that role, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously with the pubs closing and all these outlets for mental health. Yeah. And I know that just recently they've, the local sort of agricultural college have just released with the kind of young farmers club, which was, you know, I went to young farmers when I was a kid, which was, you know, it was just a social club. It was all the farmers and all the local people get together. We used to go ice skating and we used to do all sorts of stuff. And it was a really cool sort of club as such that and obviously a lot of them are now getting shelved because of funding and, you know, people can't afford it, blah, blah, blah. And people forget, I think, sometimes about those aspects. And I think the mental health aspect of farming is and you hit the nail on the head there. I think that stoic kind of demeanor. And I think that's an older generation thing as well. So I think you being part of that is a massive opportune moment, because you're coming from a new generation who understands a little bit more about the pressure that modern people are under, you know, people who haven't been in this little kind of echo chamber that I think farming goes through, because it's a hand-me-down profession, you know. So you're in this echo chamber of your family and the farm, and then you create your own echo chamber that is just an extension of this family and farm, and then you create another echo chamber, and then there's nobody coming in from outside and going, hold on, whoa, there's a couple of things we can deal with here. You know, a bit like what we were talking about with the science aspect, is that somebody comes in from the outside and goes, whoa, you need to look at your grass. You're running out of grass here. You know, you're basically killing the field, which means that it's going to be no good to you in 6 months. So then they'll go, right, we better do that. You know, we were always under the mentality that if we just took them out and put back in again, we'll all be good. So it was it's that outside, bringing the outside mentality and bringing it into that environment, which I think is something that you're doing that's incredible. So it's, you know, it's fantastic that that's been brought to that particular community, because it's a huge community. It's a community that's very close. You know, I know people in it. So I think that's a really important thing. So what does the future hold for Hannah Jackson? What are the plans? What are the plans going forward?
Do you know, it's crazy, isn't it? The issue is there's a lot of strings to the bow going on at the minute. So I mean, they're all going in different directions. We've just bought a house across from the farm. We are in a huge renovation job for that. Me and Danny, that's my fiance. We're getting married in September. That's the first initial thing. So we're currently like knocked 3 sides of that down. We're building that back up. And that's amazing. It's right opposite the farm. Like, it'll be 4 bedrooms, like something like our family can grow into one day and just be there. And like, literally it's home. And then, the plan, the farm, I just want the farm to get to a nice, steady 400. I mean, the dream would be to get it so we can get a place where we can buy all the land and we can own it, and we can really start kind of saving a lot of money that way, really, because renting land like is expensive, and it takes a big chunk of what I actually make on the farm, and it's gone just to have the sheep on the grass. So I mean, to get a base that's big enough to kind of run the farm all together in one area, because we were a bit split around with all the land, and literally just at 400 sheep, but doing it as best as possible is the way. So they're like the personal ones, but I think the main and the biggest passion for me, and the most important thing for me, is to really connect these two worlds back together again, like the farming world back with like the general public. I think it is so far apart. Like, I do loads of school talks, and like the amount of kids that I go into that can't tell me where milk comes from, like, it makes me so scared. It scares me. Like, they think that milk just comes from a tap like water, and I'm like, whoa, like that's when you realize the disconnect is huge, like absolutely massive. So like, that is my thing, is to really try and pull these two worlds back together, and show people that actually on a farm we massively care about our animals. Like, they're put before ourselves, like every day, like they are our main priority. And just to connect them again, and to get people thinking about where the food comes from and buying responsibly, so we actually start to kind of see a world that looks after itself much better than what it is now. So I think my main goals is it's much bigger than just like Red Shepherdess, if that makes sense.
No, I think the whole farming community is, it needs that. It's not just, it's not just your particular, sheep farming, it's got to extend beyond, it's every kind of food, right? People don't know where anything comes from. People are like, oh, it just comes from Morrison's. I'm like, well, no, there's a history. It came from somewhere beyond that, and
it came from somewhere. Like you should know all about animals, and that, to be fair, that's why I've got the utmost respect for vegans and people that live a vegan lifestyle, because they pay so much attention to where the food came from, how it was produced, how it got to the plate. I wish that every meat eater took the same responsibility of where their food came from and sourcing kind of sustainable, high welfare kind of meat, and not just kind of grabbing the nearest burger and running.
Yeah, I think there's a massive thing there. I mean, the industry that I deal, and the community that I deal with, is a lot of people will go to things like veganism because, it's a simple rule, right? You just avoid animal products. And the problem you've got with them is the other side of that coin is that you've got people who don't understand. They don't get it. They don't understand that, you've got to take real care and attention over the foods that you're eating, not just from a nutritional perspective, but from a, what is the quality of this food?
From an environmental, exactly.
Yeah. So it's it all comes to the fray, and it's great that there's people like yourself out there doing that and bringing that to the forefront. It's a massive thing. So, and Danny, your fiance, is also a young man in a very bizarre world again. He's a farrier, right?
He's a farrier, yeah.
Oh, so explain to people what a farrier is, because people aren't going to get it.
Yeah, so a farrier is basically the person that puts a shoe on a horse. So the little like horseshoes you see where he makes them and puts them on. It's a bit like a blacksmith, but he's just on horses' shoes. He doesn't make anything else. So he looks after like a massive race yard. Well, 3 actually, but one really big one up here. Nikki Richardson's race yard in Penrith. Greystoke, he looks after them. Does all their shoeing, does 2 other smaller race yards, and then he looks after, I don't even know how many other private shoes and horses he does. It's insane. He's super busy. But like me and Dan, like we're just like the male female version of each other. Like we've both, he's from Bolton originally, he's not from Cumbria, he's nothing to do with farrieing or nothing. We've both kind of like built this life separately and done it all ourselves, and like made a really successful businesses. So we just understand, and we just kind of like come together, and it's just created like this like power couple. Do you know what I mean? Without boasting or making that sound like I don't mean that in like a big-headed way. Just like when we're together, like we feel like unstoppable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But you are both in worlds. You're both in these worlds that you kind of don't belong in.
No, that's
weird. Right? And I was like, hold on. So Danny's a farrier. Is that the sort of thing you leave school at that age and go, I want to shoe horses, and I want to be, and even like being a blacksmith, right? Is like it's like an old trade. Normal. It's
literally, it's an old. We're both old trades, like, and things that they're not industries that are massively doing that well. And it's super weird and rare, isn't it? But it's just brilliant, and he's brilliant, and like we have so many kind of aspirations and that for the future, to grow this, grow that. We call it like build the empire. Like we're wanting to build the empire, so like no matter what, like our future is just like future proofed to the max, and and just to like look back and know like we have done so far, like we've built it for ourselves, and we've worked to the bone, and like we've sacrificed what we've needed to, and we can do that together because we've both done that, and we are both of that mentality of like only you can build the empire for yourself.
That's amazing. And hey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the insight into your world. It's been fascinating, and I'm very conscious of time, and it's I'm sure there's numerous rabbit holes and numerous just off topic conversations we can have. You actually live just it's practically up the road from where I was born and brought up, so which is fascinating in itself. But literally. But thank you so much, Hannah, for your time. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me too. And I know it's completely different to what you normally do, so thank you. It's been awesome.
No, it's been great, and best of luck for everything with the future. Your book, Call Me Red, available from literally everywhere, right?
Everywhere,
wherever you want, and best of luck with things in the future.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Thank you once again.
See ya.
Bye.